Hi all. Hi all. I'm Cullen Haynes and welcome to Lawyer Lending Live. Looking forward to bringing on my next guest today because it's quite timely. We're going to be talking about what you should do in a decreasing rate market and should you use a buyer's agent. Rasti Vaibhav is a leading buyer's agent and he's just come out with his new book and has 5 years in the industry. Can you please make very welcome my dear friend, Rasti Vaibhav. How are you, Rasti? What's happening, sir?
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Look, a lot is happening. Yes, it's February, but seems that we already gone through, probably have done already half a year of, I guess, inquiries and the interest building up in the property market, as you know, Cullen.
It's all happening. It's all happening. I wanted to get your thoughts. What are you seeing in the market? Because right now, there's this bit of a lull. Obviously, rates are on hold. There's talk that they could come down in August and September. What are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I'm no economist by any trade, but I've studied enough to know. And so my background is I'm actually MBA in finance. And just looking at the data, that's what we do as even as a buyer's agency, is to look at the data. And when it comes to the macroeconomics, when the likes of the interest rate, that certainly is a factor because that is impacting a lot of borrowing power issues or just the affordability side of things. When people have seen the interest rate going through the roof from 0.1% to where we are, people have been on the back foot because of A, the rising interest rates, and B, the mortgage cliff that we have been talking about. But now what we're really seeing is that with the inflation under control almost, of course, it might take a few more months to get there, but the verbatim that we are getting from RBI governors is that it certainly, they can't really give a, kind of a spin that people might start, I guess, start undoing what they've done. So they will still say it's a very optimistic, cautious that we should be. And what we are really seeing is reading between the lines of the data that I think we already had enough of the rate rises. If at all, it should be stable for now. And come, say, September, October, or even August for that matter, if inflation is under control, we probably might see a rate cut rather than otherwise. So, and maybe leading to Christmas this year, that would be a good opportune time for government as well to speed up the spending because the consumer is really very much cautious. Uh, Inflation is taking a big toll on their back pocket.
No, it's good points that you make, my friend. And we've already got a lot of people tuning in live. It's now 4:50 in Sydney on the east coast of Australia. We're broadcasting live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Instagram live. So if you have any burning questions for this absolute powerhouse, put them in the comments and we will ask Rasti right now. Now, one question I'm getting in particular, Rasti, is, Cullen, this is just my generic voice. Cullen, I'm wanting to get into the market. Should I wait to get my pre-approval until rates go down? Like, should I sit tight for the next 6 months? What do you say to those people that come to you with
that's a classic question. Classic question. Is it the right time? Should I come back? Look, a very generic answer is it's the time in the market that matters. Then of course it's a very personal circumstances of the individual. If they feel their personal balance sheet, the risk profile is better after 6 months, of course, relatively that's better. But can we really take the benefit of the market opportunities? To me, the way I look at it, the business, this is the business of property investing. This is purely a business. We need to think about risk and we have to think about the returns. In other words, a simple English, it's a pros and cons, the cost and the benefit. Yes, there's a benefit that we are really going with a bigger, I guess, savings after 6 months. So that's the benefit, but the cost is there's an opportunity cost. What if the market goes up by the 5% between now and in 6 months, which is very much the case if you pick the right market, and we are already seeing more than 5% difference between now and 6 months market timing. So there's a time in the market, plus Australia is a very heterogeneous market. What it means, there are markets within the markets. What we hear and what's really happening in Sydney for Sydney siders, or what is really happening in Melbourne for the Melbourne siders, it's really a question of, okay, which market today would make a lot of sense to buy? And then, yes, what market we can buy today would be a great market to buy versus what market we pick in 6 months, that will be a different market potentially. So we can't really compare the market as well because things will change.
They always change, mate. The only thing certain in life is that things will change. One of my mentors told me that back in the day. But we all know, because we deal with lawyers, as you know, lawyers, partners, barristers, and firm owners, and lawyers and real estate agents, they don't really go well together, let me tell you. So I wanted to ask you, what is a buyer's agent? How are they different? And how can you trust someone that is incentivized to buy a property and not make sure that they're paying too much for it? So I'd love to ask that question. What is a buyer's agent?
I love that question. Love that question. Certainly, there's a lot of awareness required in this segment in this country. But very quickly, the fact that you said that, when not just lawyers, actually, not many people actually like real estate agents for that matter. Look, real estate agents are professionals who are getting engaged or commissioned by the seller of the real estate to sell the property on their behalf. That's the definition of a selling agent, which we really call them as real estate agents. Because they are professionally, ethically, legally are supposed to represent the seller, their work is around protecting the interest of the seller, which is basically making sure, A, the property sells, and B, it gets sold at a maximum price possible. Now, sorry to say that, but like if doctors come at the most trusted professionals, real estate agents are not in the top few there, as you probably know.
Neither are bankers and brokers and lawyers. In fact, I did this table at Macquarie. It was a likability and trust. And
Yes.
Lawyers, bankers, real estate agents are all in the bottom left. And the person's accountant is way up in the stars. Everyone loves their accountant and trusts their accountant. It's crazy.
Totally. So because of that, I guess, perception, I'm not really saying not everyone can't be trusted, but because of the perception, it's just so hard, especially when the buyer goes out there in the market to look for a property. Now, a buyer is more of an emotional buyer. They have probably spent 3-4 months looking around for the right property for themselves. They have really taken the heat of jumping on different websites, going out in the open homes, only to realize they have no clue what's really they have to look for. Typically, there was a study which was saying that typically about 56% of property buyers spend less than 60 minutes in the property before they make a decision to buy.
Wow.
Less than 60 minutes. So think about it, like probably an average Australian spend more time picking their washing machine or a refrigerator than they actually spend time in the property before they buy. And we are talking about millions of dollars a year.
Right? That's crazy.
Yeah, indeed. So now think about it. Now the buyer is an emotional buyer. He really wants to get his time back, go back to his golf, or taking the kids to netball or soccer games and whatnot. They just want to get out of this race of finding the property, and especially when there's a fear of missing out, as we know, FOMO that prevails sometime now and then. So now what really happens is the buyer is very emotional buyer, sales agent, a very professional, best in the town, is representing the seller, and all of a sudden it's an unleveled playing field between the seller and the buyer because of the introduction of the professional sales agent. They know all the tactics in the town. They know what to do. They know what selling means, and they'll do all sort of emotional play to get the buyer invoked or captivated to make any offer to buy the property. Now, this is not really the nicest thing for the buyer. Now, welcome or get introduced to a buyer's agent. Now, buyer's agent, what they do, they understand the buyer. Their job is to represent the buyer and work in the best interest, not only to find exactly what the buyer is looking for, then look for the right property, do the research, then also negotiate on the right terms and conditions of the contract before we go and buy the property. So buyer's agent introduction really brings back the leveling of the field, because now what buyer's agent is doing, he's really representing the best interest of the buyer, getting the right deal at the right price. That's what a typical buyer's agent does. And for the reason we don't like a selling agent in general, I'm saying, I love them, by the way, because we work together very well with them, and it's more of a collaboration, is the reason why we should be looking to work with a buyer's agent, because they bring it more personal, they understand the requirements, they come with a strategy and whatnot. So that's what the role of buyer's agent is. In this country, we are still building up the awareness, but look, we'll get there. So it's certainly
we'll get there. We'll get there. And Katrina Collins, a legend on LinkedIn, has already said, Ben Jenkin, you may find this interesting. Talking buyers agents. Well, there's a talking buyers agent, Rusty. I'm a broker, not a lawyer. People think I'm a lawyer. I'm not. But we're all talking about all things property and buyers agents today. So if you're rewatching, thank you so much. If you're re-listening, thank you. And obviously, this is not financial advice. Go and speak to your accountant or financial advisor if you want to get a review of your lending situation and personal situation. Now, how much does a buyer's agent cost? Because that is the number one question I get. How much is this going to cost me? And is it worth my time? Because why don't I just go to all these open homes and do it myself and negotiate myself? Because lawyers are very good negotiators.
Yes.
Why should they spend money on a buyer's agent, and how much does it cost, Rusty?
No, great question. Great question. So it really comes down to what is the value that's being offered. First of all, we can't really talk about cost without talking about the value. So let's talk about the value, and then we'll ask you back how much you can really afford to pay for that kind of services. So first of all, buyer's agent, because I think we missed on the other part of the question before, that they have to be independent. They have to be working for the best interest of the buyer and only the buyer. So when we are picking the right independent, the right candidate for the buyer's agent, we know for a fact that he or she will be representing the buyer and their interest. Now, there are multiple levels that buyer's agent bring value. First is this understanding, more of a consultant's approach of understanding what the family is looking for. Because sometimes we have just an idea that, okay, this is the kind of property I would like to live in, because that's just an idea. What a buyer's agent, a good buyer's agent would do would actually uncover each and everything. It's not just a 4-bedder home. It's like, okay, 4-bedder with, okay, there's an ensuite, okay, there's a double story, there's a room downstairs with a parent's room, things like that. They go deep into appreciating what the ideal property looks like. Then we really talk about, like, okay, researching like where we can find the right fit for the property that we are looking for. So there's a lot of research goes around it. They are independent. There's no emotion whatsoever. They're very objective in their dealing. And then they're very professional negotiator. Of course, lawyers are very good at negotiating, no doubt about it. But here it's about the context of the property. It's like, how many properties have they really negotiated in the past? Compared to a professional buyer's agent who is doing this on a daily basis, on a day in, day out. They understand the product, as in the property. They understand the differentiator. If there's a property, which, for example, a swimming pool, all of a sudden the comparable sales, the way we work out our own valuation of the property, it's different when it is a swimming pool, when there's a view from the house, or when it's a catchment area of a good school. Things like that actually changes entirely the thing. But there's another aspect of it. We tend to know the seller and the motivation of the seller as well through the selling agent in a professional way. Now, the price or the property that we are transacting at is as good as the seller keen to sell it for and the buyer keen to buy it for. While seller is working for the highest price possible, we are trying to work with the lowest price possible. When we put things in context, when we really talk about examples of 7 other properties which have sold for lower price, we give the reason why we should be buying this property, say, X dollars less than what was really being pitched in the market. So with that negotiation, we bring down the price. Of course, with the research that we bring, those are 2-3 aspects that we're really referring to. But the key thing here, in addition to that, because we are doing this professionally, we try to buy the property which has a more fundamental appeal to the general public, which assures that it's less risky investment. If it is an investment or even as a home, the value is very much protected and it's more likely to grow because we have taken care that there's least amount of objections in the general public opinion about the property. So all of a sudden we are buying it well, we are negotiating harder, and we're making sure the property we are buying has good chances to outperform the market. And when we really talk about the average pricing of a good buyer's agent, it really comes down as a percentage, anything between, say, 1.5% to 2.5%, 3%, depending on whom we are talking to, of the transaction amount or the purchase price. but
Very
worth the
good.
salt on the right person.
Great question there, my friend. And thank you. And good answer too. Good answer too. And to Din, who is an absolute powerhouse on LinkedIn as well, said, great question. So people were wondering how much a buyer's agent cost. And I think you answered it in spades. We've already got a lot of people tuning in. Be sure to ask questions, guys and gals. It is now 5:03. Put them in the comments and I'll answer them live on the show. We are live. This is happening right now if you're tuning in. How do you build a property portfolio, Rusty?
No, great question. So the way to build a portfolio is just like any journey. We need to know what our starting point is, what's our end goal is. And then, of course, we need to appreciate what our limitations, what our constraints, what our resources are. And similarly, the pathway to build a portfolio is nothing but the same aspects of it. Starting point, how much we can borrow, what's our savings plans, those things as of today, where we would like to end up, what's our end goal. Because when we start with the end in mind, it's a lot more clearer how we are going, what we are trying to do. And of course, we need to appreciate the limitations around it, the borrowing capacity. I mean, sooner or later, we'll hit the borrowing capacity. There's a risk profile, not just the willingness of taking risk, but also the tolerance of taking risk. Then we need to appreciate that it's not really an overnight job of building a portfolio. It's a multi-year process, one step at a time or one property at a time. So there's a savings plan into play as well. So starting point, end point, limitation, resources, and constraints take into account. We go one step at a time, like buying the right property in the right place for the right price. Of course, applying the right strategy so that we can buy one property. And because of the tactics, whether we are buying for the capital growth or are we trying to buy it for cash flow, based on that, we are planning that we can extract that equity out from the first one, as and when there's enough equity to fund the purchase of the next one. And then it's a repetition, basically. It's a repeat and rinse kind of a thing. We buy it well, wait for it to grow sometime, get the equity out, and then we do it again. Concept called pyramiding in our language. But of course, if somebody has more resources to go for, because the sooner we build it up, more time we can give it for it to grow. So depending on what gear we are on, how much resources we have, and like we have been helping lots of people, sometimes they have very limited resources. So we have to really buy the right property to start with. I mean, that goes without saying for every instance, but in this case, it's very much of a more of an experience to get into, that they become comfortable and then come back after 6, 8, 10 months later on with their additional savings and some equity from the first property to go and buy the next one. But now there are 2 properties working and additional savings coming in. Now the purchase of the second property will be much quicker, and then so on, we build it up. There has to be exit strategy as well. We can't really just keep on adding our portfolio. So we really work like a strategist first, as a wealth strategist, and then we work it backwards, how many properties we need in how many years, what sort of cash flow we should be looking at. And of course, we work someone like yourself, because the borrowing strategy is a critical part. Of course, we need to work with the accountant to understand what sort of structure we should be using so that we can minimize the tax liability and stuff like that. So it's a team play, if I can really summarize it in a way.
There's no I in team, but there's an M and an E, though. There's a me. Look out, look out. Tu's got a great question. Thanks for tuning in again, Tu, from LinkedIn. Is there any consideration of the buyer's agent charging the real estate agent instead? There is a lister and a seller of the property. They split the income. Can the buyer's agent take the income of the seller and charge less or none from the buyer? Oh, that is a good question there, Tu. Come on.
Okay, let me digest this. So splitting. So, like as I was saying before, independence is the key thing here. If the buyer's agent who's representing the buyer and someone also, there's already a conflict in place. So if you're really saying that they are working, okay, I'll take a step back. There's a misconception around buyer's agent that they are getting some kickback from the seller. And that could really happen as well. So I wouldn't really deny that altogether. And that's why it is important for the independence aspect, or the element I'm referring to. It's so much pronounced when we are really talking about new properties, like when it is a home and land packages or it's off the plan properties. then certainly what's really happening is the developer or the builder or the marketer is using a buyer's agent, which is probably not really buyer's agent. They are in a way selling agent trying to sell the properties, but because they have access to the buyer, they are no longer independent by that instance, by the way, already. But there's a thing that buyer agent really get compensated by the side. Their advice will become biased because they are trying to sell the product. So truly being independent is a key aspect. For someone like us, we actually deal only in existing market, as in properties which are in the market.
Yes.
We get access to even off-market properties, but they're still existing properties. And there's no way that we can have, I guess, a split from that perspective, unless we have built some under the table program with the selling agent. Anything comes under this particular agency, we try to sell those properties. Again, that's not really the ethical practice, or even it's an illegal practice, I would say, because independent means, I guess, working only for the buyer. Wherever we bring dollar figure, there's already a risk of getting biases. So it has to be plain, transparent. And one of the reasons, or one of the aspects that the buyers need to look out before they engage a buyer's agent, the efficiency as well as the independence.
Well said. Well said. And I'd love to ask, because you have come out with your book. Tell me about your book, my friend, the Property Wealth Blueprint. I've got the link up here for people to know. Tell me a little bit more, my friend.
Sure. So what we have found is that lots of people are just looking for our property. What they do is that they just go, because they have the resources today, they have some equity in the property or maybe some extra savings. What they tend to do is, like they said, all right, what we can go and do about this money. Of course, property investing might be a decent way. So they go and buy our investment property. After a few years, they realize that, okay, I can do something more. And that's when they go and start to do something like that. However, the challenge with this reactive approach is, probably which is really said in the statistics, like 90% of property investors, they get stuck after one or two investment properties. And the lack of strategy or lack of due diligence are those two elements that really differentiates between an average buyer's agent or average property investor versus a very proficient property investor who go and build up the portfolio. So what I realized is that the book, the Property Wealth Blueprint, which is sitting on my desk, is basically about having a blueprint or having kind of a roadmap for someone starting off fresh, or somebody has already started some of their journey, and imagine getting a GPS or a strategy to work it out what their end goal is and how can they trace it back or work it backwards, that, okay, what they should do today. Just like a GPS, we feed in the end goal, let GPS tell how to do what to do. And of course, I've highlighted the importance of the team, getting it right. And that's how you can get a blueprint for anyone to become successful, to build a portfolio. So GPS or a blueprint to build the portfolio.
Very good. And two is just checking in to say, very well said. So well done, Rasti. And I'd love to get your thoughts, and I'll put the link in, obviously, to the book again for people to pick it up, because it is great. And there is a link that if you follow this, you don't pay the full price at Amazon list. You're just paying the shipping and handling. So make sure you get onto that. I'd love to ask you, is there any tips for people starting fresh, don't have any property, starting their property journey, tuning in now saying, I need to get my first property, whether it's investment or owner op? What's your tips?
No, great question. So to me, it's more around start with the end goal. Start with, anyone can buy one property, anyone. All you need to do is basically turn up an auction, go to the bank, get the loan, buy the property. Buying the property is the easy part. It's a very easy part. The key thing is like what we really want to achieve from that property, have the clarity around it. The reason why you're buying your first property should be the reason you should be buying your third or the fourth property as well, because property is such a great tool, such a great asset in this country to build wealth. So my I guess 2 cents would be, start with your end goal, like, and work it backwards, and invest in your education. Investing in your education is the best investment, and that will reap so much benefits out there, because it's a team sport. It's not really a one-man show.
I love that. I love that. And the number one thing you wish you knew before you started your journey? If you could go back in time and tell yourself something, what would be that one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Start early and have a mentor. Because when you start early, there's so much of chances of making mistakes. It's a costly mistake. It's a costly mistake. So the fear of risking really slows us back, really slows us down so badly. So the key thing is, like, while we are educating ourselves, like, hang around with the successful people who have done it so well, and have a coach, a paid person, paid relationship whereby they can really take care of you or your journey. Because that's, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel, or like, if I need to go somewhere, I'm better off asking someone who has already been there successfully and helping other people. So mentorship, coaching, paid, unpaid, doesn't matter. Keep investing in yourself as education, and hang out with the right people who have done it so much more, that can really inspire us to do a slightly more than what we can think of ourselves.
Very well said. It reminds me of what Jim Rohn used to say: in 5 years' time, you'll be different because of the books you read and the people you spend time with. So there you go. So well said, mon ami. Read Rusty's book and hang around people like this behemoth. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining us today, Rusty. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure. No, thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure, everyone. And we'll upload this to all your streaming: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, Instagram will be ready to go. Have a great Wednesday. Bye for now, everyone.